Did you ever stop and wonder how many strange little secrets were hiding inside Scooby-Doo back in 1969? Secrets even longtime fans never knew. Today, you and I are walking through 20 weird things about the original Scooby-Doo, and maybe, just maybe, one of these will unlock a version of you that time forgot. So let's start with the biggest twist of them all. The show was rejected for being too scary. You wouldn't guess it from the bright colors and goofy chase songs, but the first version of Scooby-Doo wasn't something you would have watched with a smile. It was darker, more shadows than slapstick, more tension than giggles, and the network hated it. The pitch was called Who's SSS Scared, and it leaned into real horror. Imagine watching that as a kid. Dim hallways, creatures that felt less guy in a mask, and more something is actually in here with you. You can almost feel that prickly sensation on your arms, right? The hush in the room, the way your breath would have slowed as the gang opened another creaking door. But in the late 1960s, after a year filled with national violence and frantic parental groups worried about TV corrupting kids, CBS took one look and said absolutely not. They didn't want nightmares, they wanted safety, so the creators softened everything. The monsters would always be fake, the danger would always be pretend, and comedy, big, bumbling, lovable comedy, would sit at the center. It's funny how something meant to protect children ended up becoming a core childhood memory for you. Do you ever wonder how your Saturdays might have felt if Scooby-Doo had stayed a horror show instead of becoming comfort food? Scooby was named after a Frank Sinatra scat line. Picture this, you're stuck on a long airplane ride, mind drifting the way yours sometimes did on road trips as a kid, when a song crackles through those tinny overhead speakers. Frank Sinatra's voice, soft, smooth, impossible to ignore. And then that ending riff, Dooby-Dooby-Doo. Fred Silverman, a CBS executive, heard that on a flight in 1969, and something in his brain just clicked. Not Dooby-Doo, but Scooby-Doo. And suddenly the dog, who wasn't even meant to be the star, became the star. There's something beautifully messy about that, isn't there? A character you grew up with didn't come from a long design meeting or a full committee brainstorming session. He came from a misheard lyric at 35,000 feet. Meanwhile, today's studios plan every detail. Years ahead, algorithms, marketing forecasts, audience tracking. Back then, a single whimsical moment shaped an entire cultural icon. What's the last accidental idea in your life that ended up changing something bigger than you expected? Scooby originally looked nothing like the dog you know. If you close your eyes right now, you can picture him perfectly. The long neck, the spots, the bow-legged wobble, the goofy shoulders that slump whenever he's scared. But here's the thing, Scooby wasn't meant to look like that at all. Originally, he was a sheepdog named Too Much, a shaggy, floppy character who played bongos in a teen rock band. You can almost feel the texture of that fur, long, soft, brushing past your fingers like an old stuffed animal. But the creators worried he looked too much like Hot Dog from the Archies show, so designer Iwao Takamoto talked to a professional Great Dane breeder who described the perfect dog. Straight back, strong legs, elegant lines. Takamoto decided to do the exact opposite. Hunched back, bowed legs, oversized chin, wrong colors. You can picture it, can't you? That gangly, lovable awkwardness. And suddenly, he wasn't just another cartoon dog. He became Scooby. It makes you wonder, how many of the things you love most today only exist because someone deliberately broke the rules? The Mystery Gang was originally a teen rock band. If you ever felt like the chase scenes in the original show had a strangely musical vibe, there's a reason. Scooby-Doo didn't start as a mystery show. It started as a musical series called Mysteries 5, about a teenage band solving crimes between gigs. The dog, still named Too Much, played the bongos. Just imagine that. Freddy adjusting guitar strings, Daphne rehearsing harmonies, Velma tapping her foot to keep time, Shaggy hitting those laid-back, hippie rhythms. You can hear it, right? The warm crackle of a 60s guitar amp, the steady beat of bongos echoing through a basement rehearsal space, the smell of old carpet and teen energy. But CBS looked at the music angle and realized they already had the Archies, and they didn't want to copy, so the instruments disappeared. The mystery stayed. Today, teen bands and cartoons feel like relics, nostalgic, a little cheesy, a little too clean. But back then, it was the cool thing, the now thing. Do you think Scooby-Doo would have lasted 50 plus years if it had stayed a band show? Scooby is actually a triplet. This one always surprises people because it feels like you're stumbling into secret family history you were never supposed to know. Scooby isn't an only dog. He's not even just Scrappy's uncle. He's part of a set of three: Scooby, Skippy, and Dooby-Doo. Skippy, the smart one, always drawn with glasses, the kind of dog who'd have taught you how to use a computer back when everything still beeped and blinked. Dooby, the performer, the singer, the cousin your parents always compared you to at holidays. And then Scooby, the nervous one, the sweet one, the one who always tried even when he didn't want to. If you think about it, that dynamic feels familiar, doesn't it? Like sibling roles you saw in real life. Like the pressure or the comfort of being part of a set, even when you didn't ask to be. In today's era of tight continuity and serious lore building, this kind of weird, whimsical family tree would feel out of place. But in the 70s and 80s, it made Scooby's world feel bigger, softer, more alive. Which one of the three brothers do you think you would have bonded with? Scooby's real name isn't Scooby. Here's a detail you almost certainly missed as a kid, yet once you hear it, you can't imagine not knowing it. Scooby's real name is Scooby-Doo, not a joke, not a fan theory, canon. There's something wonderfully formal about it, like the dog equivalent of a stiff, old-fashioned full name you only hear when your mother is angry. Scooby-Doo, get down from there this instant. But the nickname, Scooby, felt warmer, lighter, easier to shout and fear when running from a ghost. Today, character names are focus tested, selected to maximize merchandise potential. But Scoobert, it feels human, accidental, endearing. What's the most surprising real name you've ever learned about someone you thought you knew? Scooby is perpetually 7 years old. This detail slips right under the radar because the gang never changes and time never really moves. But according to the creators, Scooby is eternally 7 years old, in dog years. If you translate that into human years for a Great Dane, he's middle-aged, somewhere around 50. But emotionally, he's just 7, eager, fearful, food-motivated, loyal to a fault. And once you know that, every moment you remember with him takes on a different texture. You can feel the youth in his panic, the innocence in his laughter, the childlike thrill in solving a mystery. Compare that to today's hyper-aged, continuity-heavy cartoon universes, where characters grow older, storylines deepen, and nothing stays the same. Scooby, he's the friend who never changed, who never left, who never aged out of your life. Who in your world has stayed that constant? The gang was modeled after characters from an old sitcom. If you ever felt like the Mystery Inc. crew had strangely familiar personalities, even before you understood what archetypes were, there's a reason. The whole gang was modeled after characters from the sitcom The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Picture Fred as the clean-cut Dobie, Velma as the brilliant, slightly awkward Zelda, Daphne as the stylish, magnetic Thalia, Shaggy as Beatnik Maynard G. Krebs, the original laid-back goofball. If you close your eyes, you can almost smell that 1960s living room atmosphere. The soft hum of a tube TV, the static glow on the carpet, the sense that every character had a place. Back then, TV borrowed from TV. Today, studios borrow from data. But as a kid, you didn't care where they came from. You just knew these characters felt real, like people you'd bump into at school or sit next to on the bus. It makes you wonder, which Dobie Gillis counterpart did you naturally gravitate toward without even realizing it? Velma's famous Jinkies was never in the script. You probably remember the sound of that word more than the word itself. Jinkies, sharp, bright, excited. The kind of exclamation you can feel in your chest, even now. But here's the weird truth. It wasn't in the script at all. Voice actress Nicole Jaffe just blurted it out during a recording session. A pure moment of surprise, and everyone in the studio froze, and then laughed. In the late 60s, recording sessions had this warm, improv-heavy energy. No stiff digital booths, no isolated ADR rooms, just people, scripts on music stands, coffee in styrofoam cups, and the freedom to try something weird. Today, every sound is controlled, every reaction is polished. But back then, one spontaneous word became Velma's entire identity. Do you still remember the first time you heard Jinkies? And did it make you feel like you had discovered something too? Velma's glasses. Gag came from a real accident. There's a reason the glasses gag feels so authentic. Velma crawling on the floor, palms sweeping frantically, voice cracking. My glasses, I can't see without my glasses, because it came from something real. During the first table, Nicole Jaffe dropped her own glasses and panicked, muttering that exact phrase. The writers loved it and immediately built it into the character. Imagine the sound of glasses hitting the linoleum floor, the tiny tap, the sudden hush as everyone looks over. You've probably lived some version of that moment yourself, losing something small but essential, feeling helpless for just long enough to laugh about it later. In a world where most cartoon gags are engineered for maximum appeal, it's comforting to know this one came straight from human vulnerability. What's the everyday mishap from your own childhood that still sticks with you because it felt exactly like that? Shaggy became vegetarian because his voice actor refused a burger ad. This one has the energy of a rumor you heard on the playground, but it's completely true. Shaggy didn't start as a vegetarian, but his voice actor, Casey Kasem, was a strict vegan. When the studio asked him to voice Shaggy in a Burger King commercial, he refused. He couldn't promote meat, so he quit, and he only came back after producers changed Shaggy into a vegetarian. If you can imagine the taste of those old fast food burgers, the smoky smell, the crinkled wrappers, the salty bite, you can also imagine the weirdness of a cartoon character's diet becoming part of TV history. Back then, decisions came from conviction. Today, they come from brand synergy and PR strategies. But because of Kasem, a whole generation grew up seeing Shaggy reach for veggie sandwiches and eggplant burgers. Have you ever had a moment where your principles pushed you to walk away from something, even if it felt risky? Scooby and Shaggy were inspired by Abbott and Costello. If you ever wondered why Scooby and Shaggy feel like they belong on stage together, like a polished comedy duo with perfect timing, that's intentional. They were modeled after Abbott and Costello, the iconic comedy pair. You can practically hear it in their rhythm. Shaggy's frantic rambling, Scooby's sputtering responses, their shared gasps, shrieks, and synchronized sprints. That style came from mid-century radio and film comedy, a world of slapstick timing, rapid-fire banter, and a rotating door of ridiculous situations. Before modern cartoons, before algorithm-crafted humor, before reaction memes, there were classic bit-based duos who made people laugh simply through chemistry. And Scooby and Shaggy carried that torch into your Saturday mornings. Which of the two did you identify with more? The reluctant leader like Abbott or the lovable panicker like Costello? The whole show exists because America was afraid of violent cartoons. There's something surreal about realizing the show you associated with comfort was actually born from national panic. After the tragedies of 1968, especially the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, parents protested the violent cartoons filling Saturday mornings. Networks panicked. Hanna-Barbera panicked. They needed something safe, something soft, something where the scary things were always proven fake. That's how Scooby-Doo was created, as a response to real-world fear and outrage. If you think about the world today, hyper-connected, hyper-anxious, you might relate more than you'd expect. Entertainment still tries to soothe fear, still tries to calm the noise, but for you, the noise was different. The world was simpler when you watched Scooby-Doo. The monsters weren't real. The danger always had an answer. Looking back, did you ever feel safer knowing the villain was just Old Man Jenkins in a mask? Fred's voice actor started at just 23 and never stopped. Frank Welker was only 23 years old when he first voiced Fred. A kid, really, barely older than the character himself, and he's kept the role for over 50 years. Imagine being in your early 20s, walking into a small studio, not knowing the mic in front of you will carry your voice across generations. You can almost feel the warmth of the recording booth lights, hear the soft buzz of equipment, and sense that butterfly mix of nerves and hope. Today, voice roles rotate constantly. New actors, new versions, new brands. But Welker became a constant, a steady thread, a familiar sound behind your childhood. It's strange how a voice can become part of your identity without you ever knowing the person behind it. Do you remember the first time Fred's confident, steady tone made you feel like everything in the episode would turn out okay? Scooby's Ruro speech pattern is a made-up linguistic disorder. You didn't know it as a kid, you just laughed. But Scooby's signature way of speaking, swapping normal sounds for R sounds, is actually a fictional speech disorder called rhotic replacement. It was invented on the spot by voice actor Don Messick. Picture that sound in your head. Roo-ro, raggy, or I'm scared. It's playful, it's warm, it's instantly recognizable. Today, voice patterns are often digitally enhanced, filtered, edited. But in 1969, it was all human creativity. An actor twisting his voice in the booth, a studio full of people realizing they'd just heard something iconic. And decades later, that little quirk still lives rent-free in your brain. What's the Scooby line you still hear perfectly, even after all these years? The show was originally modeled after the Archies show. If you ever sensed a strange musical rhythm in those early Scooby-Doo chase scenes, the way the gang moved, the upbeat tracks, the almost band-like energy, it wasn't an accident. Scooby-Doo was originally modeled after the Archie show, complete with a teenage rock band and a dog who played bongos. Picture that earlier version of the show. Shaggy strumming a guitar, Daphne tuning a mic, Velma tapping a metronome, Fred counting the band in with a crisp 1, 2, 3, 4, and Scooby, lanky, awkward, floppy-eared, beating on a pair of tiny bongos with an earnest enthusiasm you can imagine vividly. If you listen closely to your memory, you can almost hear it. That warm, bubbly 60s pop sound that filled so many cartoons of the era. Simple chords, sunny harmonies, and lyrics about nothing heavier than teen crushes and weekend fun. But CBS didn't want a second Archies. They wanted something different. Lighter, safer, mystery-driven. Today, cartoons rarely borrow openly from each other. Not without focus groups, algorithms, and brand positioning. But in the 60s, TV was looser, messier, more experimental. Do you think you would have loved Scooby-Doo as much if the gang had actually spent their time on stage instead of chasing crooks? Scooby-Doo exists in over 15 languages, each with its own flavor. There's something magical about hearing a familiar character speak in another tongue, like stepping into a parallel universe where everything you know has been twisted just slightly. Scooby-Doo has been dubbed in over 15 languages, airing in more than 45 countries worldwide. But here's the part you can practically feel. Scooby's voice is different in every single one. In Arabic dubs, his roo-ro becomes a startled ya ilahi, a phrase that hits the ear with a different emotional texture, more dramatic, more urgent. In Hungarian, Velma's jinkies becomes hoo-ha, a sound with a roundness you can almost hear even even if you don't speak the language. In French, the show gained an entirely new comedic rhythm, the puns reworked to match the cadence of French humor. You can imagine the cultural fingerprints in every version, the subtle edits, the jokes swapped out, the lines softened or sharpened for local audiences. Today, global releases happen simultaneously, built on unified branding. But back then, every country shaped Scooby into something uniquely theirs. Do you ever wonder what Scooby would sound like speaking the language you grew up hearing at home? Some fans believe the gang were Vietnam draft dodgers. This one feels like a whispered conspiracy you hear around a campfire, half joke, half eerie possibility. There's a long-running fan theory that the Mystery Inc. gang were actually draft dodgers, traveling endlessly in the Mystery Machine in 1969 to avoid being called up for the Vietnam War. Think about the details that fuel it. Fred and Shaggy look college age. They have no jobs, no parents, no fixed address, no school, no responsibilities, just the open road. You can picture that van rolling across America's back highways, gas station coffee smells, dusty summer air blowing through the windows, the radio crackling with protest songs and late-night talk shows. Of course, the creators deny the theory, but fans latch onto the idea because it fits the mood of the late 60s, the uncertainty, the rebellion, the constant motion. Compare that to today's cartoons, where backstories are carefully crafted, continuity is king, and characters have entire wiki pages. Back then, mystery wasn't just part of the plot, it was part of the characters themselves. Do you think there's a version of you that wants the theory to be true because it adds a deeper, more human layer to the gang you grew up with? Fans have spent decades insisting Shaggy is a secret stoner. You've probably heard this one whispered your entire life, like a joke that never gets old because it always feels possible. Shaggy's constant munchies, his mellow, spaced-out vibe, his paranoid reactions, his tie-dyed green shirt, his hippie cadence, and, of course, the way smoke always seemed to billow from the back of the Mystery Machine, no matter how innocent the scene. For decades, fans have insisted Shaggy is a stoner. The theory never dies, even though the creators insist it isn't true. You can practically feel the clues in the air, the lingering aroma of too many snacks, the easygoing voice that sounds like someone drifting through a warm haze, the refrigerator raids that go far beyond normal hunger. But part of why the theory stuck is because the show aired in 1969, right at the height of the counterculture, right when older generations assumed any long-haired kid was up to something. Compare that to today's hyper-aware media, where hidden meanings are rarely accidental. Back then, cultural echoes just slipped in, naturally, without effort. Do you think the Shaggy you remember would laugh at the theory, or confirm it with a wink? Scooby was purposefully designed wrong. There's something comforting about knowing that Scooby-Doo, your childhood companion, was never meant to look perfect. In fact, he was built to look wrong. Animator Iwao Takamoto studied the traits of a prize-winning Great Dane: straight legs, strong posture, elegant lines, smooth fur. And then, he did the exact opposite, every trait inverted, every standard broken, every correct detail transformed into something clumsy, crooked, or flawed. Picture that process: Takamoto sketching a humped back, then bowing the legs, then enlarging the chin, then speckling the coat, then drooping the ears just a little too far. You can almost smell the old drafting paper, the graphite smudges on fingertips, the warmth of the studio lamps as he leaned in to create a dog who shouldn't be impressive, but somehow was unforgettable. Today, character designs are polished by teams, refined by software, optimized for merchandise. But Scooby was born from an act of artistic rebellion, a refusal to follow rules, and maybe that's why he felt so real to you, because he looked like the rest of us, imperfect, uncertain, lovable because of the flaws. What part of Scooby's design feels the most iconic to you? You've just walked through 20 strange, overlooked pieces of Scooby-Doo's DNA, 20 little threads woven into the fabric of a show that shaped your Saturday mornings more than you ever realized. And maybe as you listened, you felt something familiar, that warm hum of the past, the soft glow of childhood, the comfort of remembering a world where the monsters were always unmasked and the mysteries always solved. Before we wrap, let's close with the last few memories in this anthology, each one a small doorway into the quieter corners of the 1969 show that transformed into one of the longest-running cartoon legacies in history. Think about the van itself for a second. The Mystery Machine wasn't one of the 20 official facts in our list, but emotionally, it's the glue that held everything together. You can almost feel the texture of its vinyl seats, warm in the summer, cold and stiff in the winter. You can hear the rattling of the loose metal trim. You can smell the faint mustiness of an old van that's lived through too many road trips and too many late-night stakeouts. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't cool by modern standards, but to a kid watching in 1969 or 1990 or 2005 or last week, it felt like freedom, like the idea that you could go anywhere, uncover anything, be anyone. And that's what made Scooby-Doo timeless. The promise of adventure without the danger, mystery without the fear, friendship without the conditions. It's It's strange how a fictional van felt more reliable than real life sometimes, isn't it? Let's close with one more circle through the 5-step rhythm. One final way to anchor this journey in feeling. Scooby-Doo's unwavering formula: fear, friendship, food, and a mystery. Think of that familiar chase scene music, the way it bounced on the edge of silliness, like bubblegum stuck to the bottom of your sneaker, the way Scooby's paws slapped the ground in frantic rhythm, the way Shaggy's yelps echoed through hallways with that trembling pitch you can still imitate perfectly. In 1969, TV needed something innocent. The world was heavy, protests loud, anxieties rising. Studios wanted a show where kids could breathe, where laughter didn't come from violence but from pratfalls, ghost costumes, and overly elaborate traps that never quite worked. So they built a little world where the villains weren't monsters, they were people, and people could be understood. Now, your world is filled with information. Too much, too fast. Monsters feel real sometimes. Mysteries don't always wrap up with a tidy unmasking. Life isn't drawn in clean, looping lines anymore, but Scooby-Doo remains unchanged. A time capsule, a reminder of a world where every fear had a name and every bad guy could be caught. When was the last time anything in your adult life felt that simple, that comforting, that perfectly solvable? If you're like most people who grew up with Scooby-Doo, you didn't realize how much the show seeped into you. Maybe you still quote Ruro. Maybe you still smile when someone says Zoinks. Maybe Velma taught you that being smart could be cool. Maybe Daphne's confidence rubbed off on you without you noticing. Maybe Fred's plans made you believe that even the most chaotic situation could be managed. And maybe Scooby taught you that being afraid didn't make you weak, it made you human. But the strangest part? Your connection to the show exists because of this bizarre, tangled web of behind-the-scenes decisions, misheard Sinatra lyrics, rejected horror pitches, sitcom archetypes, accidents in recording studios, and a dog designed to look nothing like a dog should. Without these oddities, documented pieces of trivia preserved from the show's early days, your memories wouldn't look or feel the same. And somehow, knowing these weird little truths makes the nostalgia sharper, sweeter, more real. So now it's your turn. Tell me, which of these weird facts hit you the hardest? Which one unlocked a memory you didn't know you still had? Which one made you smile or laugh or tilt your head and say, "Wait, really?" Drop your favorite in the comments. Share the one fact you think nobody else knows. Tell me which episode you remember most vividly and why. And if you want more deep dives into the strange stories behind the shows you grew up with, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next trip back in time. Because you never know, your next forgotten memory might be waiting in our next video.